year to go until France chooses its next president, the big question is who can save the election from being a battle of the extremes. For now, and perhaps only for now, the answer is pretty clear. It is President Emmanuel Macron's former Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is running out of time to win his war against Ukraine. Amid a stalemate on the battlefield and growing troubles at home, a European intelligence chief has told CNN in the next 4 or 5 months, Putin may not be able to negotiate from a position of strength anymore. Kaupo Rosin, head of Estonia's Foreign Intelligence Service, said in an interview at the intelligence agency's headquarters in Tallinn. Quezon City, on a highway in the Ilocos Norte province earlier this month, Father Arvin Mangrubang of the Philippine Independent Church slowly drove opposite a dozen or so hulking armoured vehicles and trucks carrying United States soldiers. He felt a pit form in his throat.
Climate debates routinely cite Pakistan's grim paradox. We are among the world's countries most exposed to climate shocks, yet we have contributed little to the emissions that drive them. At recent COPs and other international forums, Pakistan has rightly called out this injustice, as well as the failure of international recognition to translate into financing at the required scale. But it would be equally inexcusable if we failed to recognise the same pattern of injustice within the country. The regions most battered by floods, heat extremes and glacial lake outburst floods are often the least responsible for high emissions lifestyles, excessive energy use, private vehicle dependence and other climate unfriendly consumption patterns.
ASK any banker in the country to name the single largest untapped commercial opportunity on their balance sheet. And the honest answer will not include corporates, nor consumers, not even mortgages. It is the roughly 5 million small and medium enterprises, SMEs, that are ostensibly bankable but sit almost entirely outside the formal credit system today. Ask the same banker why these have not been pursued, and the answer becomes more revealing. A mixture of risk language, regulatory caveats and a quiet acknowledgement that the sector is, in some fundamental way, simply too hard to read.
Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on Saturday departed on a 4-day visit to China, according to the Prime Minister's office, PMO. In a post on X, the PMO said that Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, Planning Minister Ahsan Iqbal, Information Minister Atala Tarar, IT Minister Shahza Fatima, and PM's advisor Tariq Fatimi were also accompanying the Premier on the trip.
Elon Musk's SpaceX has launched the biggest ever Starship rocket a day after its highly anticipated test flight was delayed. The uncrewed Starship V3 rocket blasted off from its launch pad in Texas just after 17:30, 22:30 GMT on Friday, days after SpaceX revealed plans for a record-breaking stock market debut.
A member of the diving team that recovered the bodies of Italian scuba divers in the Maldives has said the equipment they were found with was not optimal. Images from inside the cave where the 4 Italians were discovered earlier this week were taken by Italian media, who told Italian media the bodies were all together in one section of the cave, which he said was very deep and very challenging.
Rubio says US in constant contact with Field Marshal Munir as the latter arrives in Iran. Notes some progress made but insists more work needed. US considers Plan B with willing NATO countries over Hormuz. Iran rules out deal if US demands handover of enriched uranium. Qatar joins mediation push in coordination with US. The UAE says Iran's end programme now top concern Islamabad. Chief of Defence Forces Field Marshal Azim Munir reached Tehran on Friday as efforts to broker an interim understanding between the United States and Iran entered a decisive phase amid cautious hopes that a fragile ceasefire around the Persian Gulf could be stabilised before tensions spiral again.
The Middle East war has reshaped conditions in Pakistan's automotive market, with petrol and diesel both at over 400 per litre, up from 258 7 Suns and 275. 70 before the conflict, consumers have been forced to consider shifting to electrified vehicles. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has called for a 30% shift to electric vehicles within 5 years, a target his government says would reduce the fuel import bill by $4.5 billion annually. But questions about how that target is to be achieved and at whose expense are still to be answered in their entirety. Washington. The US Citizenship and Immigration Services announced on Friday a sweeping policy change that would require most foreigners seeking permanent residency in the United States to leave the country and apply for immigrant visas from abroad, sharply restricting the long-used adjustment of status process. In a policy memorandum, the USCIS said applicants already in the US on temporary visas, including students, tourists and temporary workers, would generally be expected to pursue green cards through consular processing overseen by the US Department of State.
Lahore. Pakistan may spend over $1 billion on cotton imports this year as domestic production has plunged to a 4-decade low, prompting Federal Minister for National Food Security and Research Rana Tanvir Hussain to assure full government support for the revival of the cotton sector during budget consultations with the Pakistan Business Forum, PBF. A PBF delegation, led by Chief Organiser Ahmad Jawad, met the minister to discuss budgetary proposals aimed at providing a level playing field for Pakistan's cotton and agriculture sectors.
Islamabad, short-term inflation measured by the Sensitive Price Index, SPI, increased by 14.47% year-on-year for the week ending May 21, mainly due to higher retail prices of perishable food items and wheat flour, according to official data released on Friday by the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, PBS. The SPI showed a broad-based rise, indicating continued pressure on the cost of living. The increase was largely driven by sharp gains in key items, including petrol, 62.690 PC, electricity charges, 43.30 PC, wheat flour, 59.45 PC, and liquefied petroleum gas, 57.3 PC.
Opposition seeks medical treatment, visitation rights for Imran Khan. Treasury benches criticised for poor attendance in lower house. Barrister Gohar alleges suppression of dissent. Police excesses Islamabad. Leader of the opposition in the National Assembly Mahmood Khan Achakzai on Friday warned the government to meet their demands or be ready to face a complete boycott of the upcoming budget session. At least 4 people are dead and 90 others are trapped underground after carbon monoxide levels exceeded limits in a coal mine in northeast China on Friday night, according to state media. Rescue efforts are continuing at the Liu Shenyu coal mine in Changji City, Xinhua News reported. The accident happened at 9:43 p.m. local time, 9:43 a.m. ET, when 247 workers were underground. Editor's note: this story contains graphic descriptions of accusations of sexual violence, physical torture and abuse. Activists on board a humanitarian flotilla intercepted by Israeli forces on their way to Gaza say they were subjected to beatings, torture and sexual violence while in detention.
The Premier League season reaches its crescendo on Sunday, with all 10 matches kicking off simultaneously in a final act packed with jeopardy at the bottom end of the table and nearer the top in a European race tangled in permutations. The title has already been decided, and 4 Champions League places have gone to league winners Arsenal, Manchester City, Manchester United and Aston Villa.
SpaceX has launched the upgraded 3rd version of its Starship rocket for the first time. Though the test launch did not go perfectly for Elon Musk's spaceflight company, the 407-foot rocket, the most powerful ever built, lifted off from SpaceX's company town, Starbase, Texas, at 5:30 p.m. local time. Just a few minutes later, the upper stage ship separated from the Super Heavy booster and continued on into space.
In the latest sign of these AI-heavy times, the National Transportation Safety Board temporarily removed access to its docket system after discovering that voices of pilots who were killed in a UPS plane crash last year had been recreated using AI and were circulating on the internet. NTSB is prohibited by federal law from including cockpit audio recordings in its docket system, which otherwise contains troves of data on investigations and has historically been open to the public. But the accident docket for this flight included a spectrogram file of the voice recorder. A spectrogram uses a mathematical process to turn sound signals, including low and high frequencies, into an image.
At least 4 people are dead and 90 others are trapped underground after carbon monoxide levels exceeded limits in a coal mine in northeast China on Friday night, according to state media. Rescue efforts are continuing at the Liusheu coal mine in Jiangxi City, Xinhua News reported. The accident happened at 9:43 p.m. local time, 9:43 a.m. ET, when 247 workers were underground.
Mahmoud Khalil, who has been targeted for deportation by the administration of US President Donald Trump over his pro-Palestine advocacy, will appeal his case to the Supreme Court, according to his lawyers. The announcement on Friday came after a federal appeals court, in a 6-5 decision, declined to rehear Khalil's case challenging his immigration detention. Blue Origin's new mega rocket, New Glenn, is no longer grounded. The company said Friday that the Federal Aviation Administration has cleared the rocket to fly again after the upper stage failed to deliver a commercial payload during an April launch. Blue Origin didn't offer much detail, but said in a post on X that the New Glenn upper stage experienced an off-nominal thermal condition that caused one of the 3 rocket engines to produce lower than expected thrust. As a result, the Asti space mobile satellite that Blue Origin was supposed to put into orbit instead burned up in Earth's atmosphere instead. Asti Space Mobile said it had insurance coverage that covered the cost of the lost satellite. Jeff Bezos' spaceflight company submitted a report to the FAA and took corrective measures, but did not detail what those measures were.
Google has officially announced Wear OS 7 at Google I/O 2026. The new smartwatch platform is based on Android 17 and focuses on better battery efficiency, Gemini AI integration, and a redesigned way to show home screen information. The Wear OS 7 Canary emulator is available for developers now. The update will arrive on real smartwatches later this year.
See Microsoft and Playground Games' Forza Horizon 6 has crossed more than 6 million players launch within 1 week of its early access launch. The open-world racing game entered early access on May 15 for Premium Edition O-Tuners and launched fully on May 19 for Standard Edition buyers and Xbox Game Pass Ultimate users. Playground Games confirmed the 6 million player milestone shortly after the full launch.
A US judge has dismissed the criminal case against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to a mega prison in El Salvador last year. Abrego Garcia, whose deportation became a major flashpoint administration's immigration agenda, returned to the US in June after the government admitted it had wrongfully sent him back to his native country.
A calendar featuring close-ups of young, handsome men in priestly attire has been a perennial Rome souvenir for the last 2 decades, but few, it seems, are actually men of the cloth. Giovanni Galizia has been the cover shot for the so-called sexy priest calendar for many of the last 23 editions. In the same photo, used year after year, Galizia wears a clerical collar and flashes an enigmatic smile worthy of the Mona Lisa against the granite wall of a church in his native Palermo.
As Israel keeps up its attacks on Lebanon, despite a ceasefire, the United States has sanctioned 9 people, including 2 Lebanese military officers, accused of links to Hezbollah. It comes while Washington brokers more talks between Lebanese and Israeli officials. We hear how San Diego's Muslim community is grieving, supporting one another, and trying to move forward after an attack that shattered their sense of safety. How does a community begin healing after unimaginable loss? In this episode,
Santa Cruz, Bolivia. A spiraling political conflict is threatening social stability in Bolivia. Just 6 months after the new administration took office, President Rodrigo Paz is facing a wave of demonstrations, highway blockades, and growing calls for his resignation.
A United States judge has dismissed an indictment against Kilmar Abrego Garcia after finding that he would not have been prosecuted if he had not challenged his deportation. On Friday, US District Judge Waverly Crenshaw said the Department of Justice only reopened its human smuggling probe stemming from a 2022 traffic stop after Salvadoran national Abrego Garcia filed his lawsuit.